Now, I'm not one to gossip, but I will bring you the tea. Welcome to Chronicle Speaks.
So there is a sentencing hearing set for Friday, October 3rd, and Diddy is planning to Diddy bop his way right on out of jail. He even asked the judge, Judge Subramanian, if he can wear his own clothes that day instead of the prison orange uniform. Now, while we're still waiting to hear back from the judge to see if he will approve or deny that request, the government has just entered a 189-page sentencing memorandum. Now, in this memorandum, they're stating exactly why they believe Sean P. Diddy Combs deserves at least 135 months in federal prison. Now, that's over 11 years. They're also wanting him to possibly have the maximum financial penalties as well. They also included pictures of Cassie. They talked about the hotel incident, and they have witness impact statements from Cassie, Deontay Nash, Capricorn Clark, and more. We are going to get into all of this and so much more, but before we do, please be sure to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss out on any news regarding this story and so much more. Now let's get back into it. So why does the government want him behind bars and for so long? Now the feds argue that Diddy's crimes weren't one-offs. They spanned more than a decade, involving violence, drugs, coercion, and manipulation. Now, while he was acquitted on the heavier racketeering and trafficking charges, the jury still convicted him of transporting women across state lines for prostitution under the Mann Act. Now, the government says the way he carried out these crimes through abuse and control and manipulation made this case one of the most serious of its kind. They say Diddy has shown zero remorse, even blaming his victims, and his abuse has caused permanent scars, physical, emotional, and psychological. Now, here's where things get a bit tricky. Now, the prosecution isn't just relying on the 2 counts that Diddy was actually convicted of. They're bringing up all kinds of other incidents, as they did in the trial, and this is where the defense is saying there's a lot of spillover prejudice. And this is also why the defense is saying that if Diddy cannot be acquitted, they want a brand new trial just on the 2 charges that Diddy was convicted of. Now, they spoke about the alleged kidnapping of Capricorn Clark, Diddy allegedly breaking into Kid Cudi's home, along with the explosion of Kid Cudi's car. And they spoke about the 2016 infamous hotel incident in Los Angeles. We all remember where surveillance footage showed Diddy chasing Cassie down the hallway, throwing her to the ground and kicking her, right? Well, the jury never convicted him on any domestic violence charges tied to that moment. In fact, he was never even indicted for assault in the case, but prosecutors are still using it in their sentencing memo, saying it shows a pattern of violence that surrounded the Mann Act crimes, and they argue that under federal sentencing law, judges can look at all relevant conduct, not just the charges the jury found him guilty of. Now, it's not just the hotel tape that they're talking about. The government also wants the judge to weigh things like instances where he allegedly RAPED'd Cassie, times when Jane said she was drugged and forced into hotel nights, as well as letters from former employees describing SA or exploitation. Again, some of these acts were never formally charged, and others were tied to counts where the jury acquitted him. So the government is pretty much saying that reintroducing this information to the judge in time for sentencing is fair game, while the defense is saying this is spillover prejudice. Basically, they say that the jury already sat through weeks of horrifying stories, some tied to charges that didn't stick. Now, to turn around and use those same stories to jack up his sentencing is like punishing him for crimes he already beat in court. The defense is arguing that it's fundamentally unfair. How can you find him not guilty on a charge, yet still get sentenced as if you were guilty? So to fight back, the government is citing cases in this memorandum where courts allowed judges to weigh acquitted conduct when deciding a sentence. So the government's position is yes, he was acquitted on some counts, but the evidence of violence, fear, and manipulation is still relevant to show the seriousness of the crimes he was convicted of. In their view, this isn't about retrying him, it's about making sure his sentence reflects the full scope of his behavior. Now, the government focused on Cassie and Jane, stating that Cassie's relationship with Diddy was marked by control, violence, and humiliation. He called her moldable, beat her repeatedly, and forced her into multi-day freak-offs with male escorts fueled by drugs and used secretly filmed images to blackmail her. Now, years later was Jane. This was between 2021 and 2024, and they're stating that the pattern repeated through hotel nights. Nearly their entire relationship revolved around drug-filled marathon sessions with escorts. When she resisted, he controlled her with money, paying her rent, and threatening to cut her off. In June of 2024, he viciously assaulted her and then forced her to perform oral sex on an escort, and evidence of her injuries were shown at trial. So because of this, the government wants the judge to stack on every enhancement available under the federal guidelines, including using threats and fear, causing serious bodily injury, targeting vulnerable victims, playing an aggravated leadership role, and obstructing justice, like when he tried to mislead the court with a fake legal notebook. They're wanting Diddy to serve at least 135 months, and they feel it's justified because of the seriousness of the crimes. They state that Mann Act cases involving violence and fear typically result in long sentences, and they argue Diddy should be no exception. Now, here are the comparisons. They say that other Johns or traffickers got harsh time, and the government says Diddy is more culpable than many of them. They want to send a message that even celebrities with money and power face real consequences. And then there's a history of violence. They bring up decades of abuse, not just against Cassie and Jane, but also former employees who wrote letters describing SA and exploitation. So let's get into Cassie's letter to the judge. She says, "Dear Judge Subramanian, I have been in a cycle of thought and then overthought writing this letter to you. If there is one thing I have learned from this experience, it is that victims and survivors will never be safe. Although I can hope for justice and accountability, I have come to not trust anything. I hope that your decision considers the truths at hand that the jury failed to see. For 4 days in May, while 9 months pregnant with my son, I testified in front of a packed courtroom about the most traumatic and horrifying chapter in my life. I testified that from age 19, Sean Combs used violence, threats, substances, and control over my career to trap me in over a decade of abuse. He groomed me into performing repeated sex acts with hired male sex workers during multi-day freak-offs, which occurred nearly weekly. I was forced into lingerie and heels, told exactly how to look, and plied with drugs and alcohol so he could control me like a puppet. These events were degrading and disgusting, leaving me with infections, illnesses, and days of physical and emotional exhaustion before he demanded it all again. SEX acts became my full-time job, used as the only way to stay in his good graces. I testified that I learned to read Sean Combs' signals, knowing that when he spoke of freak-offs, he was demanding them, and that refusing meant punishment, losing my car, my phone, or worse. He controlled every part of my livelihood and threatened to destroy my reputation by leaking SEX tapes, a threat he repeated often. His power over me eroded my independence and sense of self until I felt I had no choice but to submit. When he believed I had wronged him or was not sufficiently responsive, he also threatened people around me and those close to me, including my family. I regularly worried that displeasing him meant putting my family and friends' safety at risk. I testified that beyond those threats, Sean Combs frequently used violence to get his way. Over the nearly 11 years we were together, Sean Combs would hit me, punch me, stomp on my face, pull my hair, and throw my body to the ground and against the wall. The jury saw pictures of bruises on my back from Combs kicking me and saw the deep gash on my eye he caused when he slammed me into a bed frame. The entire courtroom watched actual footage of Combs kicking and beating me as I tried to run away from a freak-off in 2016. People watched this footage dozens of times, seeing my body thrown to the ground, my hands over my head, curled into a fetal position to shield me from the worst blows. This physical violence caused bruises that makeup artists paid for by Sean Combs would cover up, as well as permanent scars all over my body. During my times with Combs, I was in a constant state of hypervigilance as I was always anticipating demands for sex acts or otherwise fearing retribution for any perceived slight. My descent into substance abuse was directly correlated with his increased control over my body, my money, my freedom, and my free will. I used those drugs to push through the horrifying sex acts he demanded and to numb myself to the physical pain and emotional turmoil I was constantly in. While the defense attorneys at trial suggested that my time with Combs was akin to a great modern love story, nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing about this story is great, modern, or loving. This was a horrific decade of my life, stained by abuse, violence, forced sex, and degradation. I spent the last 7 years of my life slowly rebuilding myself, physically getting clean from the drug abuse Sean Combs forced and encouraged, and mentally understanding how to live with a seemingly insurmountable level of trauma. The horrors I endured drove me to have thoughts of unaliving, ones I almost followed through on, if not for my family's intervention and urging that I seek professional care. I have been to rehab and have taken parts in dozens of types of therapy modalities to confront, compartmentalize, and cope with the horrific memories of sexual and emotional abuse I endured for nearly 10 years. While what he did to me is always present, I am slowly learning how to live my life free of the fear of horrors I endured, and in doing so, am fully devoted to my husband and my children. I still have nightmares and flashbacks on a regular, everyday basis and continue to require psychological care to cope with my past. My worries that Sean Combs or his associates will come after me and my family is my reality. I have in fact moved my family out of the New York area and am keeping as private and quiet as I possibly can because I am so scared that if he walks free, his actions will be swift retribution towards me and others who spoke up about his abuse at trial. As much progress as I have made to recovering from my abuse, I remain very much afraid of what he is capable of and the malice he undoubtedly harbors towards me for having the bravery to tell the truth. His defense attorneys claim he is a changed man and he wants to mentor abusers. I know firsthand what real mentorship means, and this disgusts me. He is not being truthful. I know that who he was to me, the manipulator, the aggressor, the abuser, the trafficker, is who he is as a human. He has no interest in changing or becoming better. He will always be the same cruel, power-hungry, manipulative man that he is. When I came out with my allegations in my civil case, he flatly denied them again and again. It was only after actual video footage corroborated the exact words in my civil complaint that he issued an insincere apology on the internet. Thanks to the footage and my testimony, this is also something he will forever be associated with. For over a decade, Sean Combs made me feel powerless and unimportant, but my experience was real, horrific, and deserves to be considered. While the jury did not seem to understand or believe that I engaged in freak-offs because of the force and coercion that the defendant used against me, I know that is the truth, and his sentence should reflect the reality of the evidence and my lived experience as a victim, reliving in detail the events and truths described throughout the trial, and this letter causes me tremendous emotional pain. I am trying with all that I am to move on. I hope that your sentencing decision reflects the strength it took for victims of Sean Combs to come forward. I hope your decision considers the many lives that Sean Combs has upended with his abuse and control. I thank you for your time and attention. Cassie Ventura Fine. Aside from Cassie's very powerful testimony or letter, the judge also received letters from several of Diddy's former employees and associates, people who once worked inside his empire. Now, these letters describe being physically, sexually, and emotionally abused, with one employee even saying that they were SA'd by him directly. Each writer urged the court to hand down a stronger sentence, stressing that his years of unchecked violence and manipulation left lasting scars on their lives. Together, these letters show that Cassie's story wasn't an isolated event. It was part of a much bigger pattern. So at this point, the picture painted by prosecutors isn't just one person's word against Diddy. It's a chorus of voices all saying the same thing. He used his power, his money, and his influence to abuse and control. And now it's time for the judge to decide how much time he'll serve for it. But one thing for sure, with Cassie's word, Jane's testimony, and these other letters on record, the world is finally seeing the truth, or the alleged truth, that lived behind the closed doors of Diddy's empire. What I need to do is hear from you. What do you think will happen at this sentencing come Friday? Leave a comment and you know how we do. We'll talk about it down below. Talk to you guys later. Bye. As always, thanks for watching, but before you go, don't forget to subscribe to this channel, hit the like button, and hit the bell so you don't miss out on any of our new episodes.